The lock clicked,
Can't leave
and
me
with
out
that single
here.
sound, a pregnant
Please,
woman's
Danielle.
life changed forever. She stood outside in negative 12 degrees, 8 months pregnant, wearing
How
nothing but
could
a
you
thin
do
sweater.
this to
And the
me?
woman who locked her out,
Caroline,
her husband's
wait,
mistress.
it's not what
The
it
same
looks
mistress
like.
who was now
Oh,
climbing the
I think she
stairs
knows
to sleep with her
exactly what
husband
it looks
while she
like.
froze to death. But here's what Danielle didn't
Marcus,
know. Here's what Marcus
please.
never expected.
I'm pregnant.
Carolyn's father was
Let
a
me
billionaire,
inside.
a man who built
So
an empire with his bare
cold.
hands, a man who would drive through a deadly blizzard to save his daughter, and a man who would spend every dollar he had to destroy the people who tried to kill her. What happens next will shock you.
Just keep
It
breathing.
will break your heart. And by the end, it will make you stand up and cheer.
No,
This is a story of
wait.
betrayal,
I am
survival,
innocent.
and the sweetest revenge
Please
served
listen
ice
to
cold.
me.
Stay with me until the very end. Trust me, you don't want to miss how this unfolds. The lock clicked. Then Danielle's voice, muffled through the glass. Enjoy the snow, sweetheart. Carolyn Whitmore pressed her palms against the frozen window. Her breath fogged the glass in short, desperate bursts. On the other side, Danielle Vance stood with her hand still on the lock. Her silk robe hung open. Her smile was sweet as poison. Danielle, Carrie's voice cracked. Open the door. But Danielle just tilted her head, like a cat watching a mouse struggle. Then she turned and walked away. Her bare feet padded against the hardwood floor. Each step carried her further into the warmth of the cabin, further from the pregnant woman she had just condemned to death. Carrie pounded on the glass. Her fists made dull thuds against the triple-pane window. Let me in, please. Let me in. The wind swallowed her words. Snow drove sideways across the deck, stinging her cheeks like 1,000 tiny needles. She wore only a thin cashmere sweater, cream-colored. Marcus had bought it for her last Christmas. No coat, no gloves, no scarf. Her ballet slippers were already soaked through. The cold water seeped between her toes. The thermometer mounted on the cabin wall caught her eye. She had to squint through the swirling snow to read it. Negative 12 degrees. Her heart stuttered. That couldn't be right. She looked again. The red line was unmistakable. Negative 12 degrees Fahrenheit. Cold enough to cause frostbite in minutes. Cold enough to kill. She had been outside for 30 seconds. Already her fingers were going numb. Already her teeth were starting to chatter. Already the baby inside her was shifting, restless, sensing her mother's distress. It's okay, Carrie whispered. Her hand found her belly, protective, automatic. It's going to be okay. But she didn't believe it, not really. 6 hours earlier, everything had been different. Carrie had driven up to the Vermont cabin with her heart full of hope. The February sun had sparkled on fresh snow. The radio had played love songs from the 80s. She had sung along, bally, not caring who heard. Marcus had promised her a romantic weekend. A baby moon, he called it. One last getaway before the baby arrived. She was 8 months pregnant, 32 weeks along. Her belly stretched the fabric of her maternity dress until the seams strained. The baby kicked constantly now. Strong kicks, impatient kicks, like she couldn't wait to meet the world. Carrie had already picked out a name. Eleanor, after her grandmother, who had passed away 3 years ago. Eleanor Margaret Whitmore, a strong name for what Carrie hoped would be a strong girl. The cabin belonged to the Ashford family, Carrie's family. Her father had built it 40 years ago when he was just starting to make his fortune. Back then, Edward Ashford was a hungry young man with big dreams and empty pockets. He had purchased the land with his first real paycheck, had built the cabin himself, board by board, nail by nail. Now Edward Ashford was worth $3 billion. Forbes put him at number 237 on their list of the world's richest people. But the cabin remained simple, rustic, a reminder of where he came from, of what he had built from nothing. Carrie had been conceived in this cabin. Her parents told her that story every Christmas, much to her embarrassment. How they had come up here during a blizzard in February of 1993. How the power went out. How they kept each other warm by the fire, wrapped in quilts her grandmother had made. 9 months later, Caroline Margaret Ashford was born. Now she was Carolyn Whitmore, married to Marcus David Whitmore for 3 years and 4 months, pregnant with their first child, coming to the same cabin to make new memories. She should have known something was wrong when she saw the second car. Marcus's black Mercedes was parked in the circular driveway. That was expected. He had driven up the day before to prepare everything, to stock the refrigerator, to lay in firewood, to make sure the heat was working. But next to his Mercedes sat a red BM, sleek, expensive, unfamiliar. The license plate was from Connecticut. Carrie didn't recognize the number. She sat in her car for a long moment, staring at that red BMW, trying to explain it away. Maybe Marcus had invited friends, a surprise, a baby shower, perhaps. Her best friend Beth had been hinting about something for weeks, dropping mysterious comments, asking about Carrie's schedule with too much interest. That must be it, a surprise baby shower. Marcus had probably invited a few couples from their social circle. They were hiding inside right now, waiting to yell surprise when she walked through the door. Carrie smiled at the thought. She grabbed her overnight bag from the passenger seat. The leather handles were cold against her fingers. She walked toward the front door, her boots crunching in the fresh snow. The cabin looked beautiful. Snow frosted the roof like powdered sugar. Smoke curled from the stone chimney. Through the windows, she could see the glow of a fire burning in the hearth. Home, she thought. This place has always felt like home. She didn't knock. Why would she? This was her family's cabin. She had a key on her keychain, right next to the key to her house in Greenwich. Right next to the key to her father's estate. The front door swung open. Warmth rushed out to greet her, the smell of wood smoke and pine, the crackle of burning logs, the soft amber light of table lamps. The living room was empty. No friends hiding behind furniture. No banner reading surprise. No baby shower. Just silence. And two wine glasses on the coffee table. Carrie set down her bag, walked to the table, picked up one of the glasses. It was half empty. Red wine. A Bordeaux from the color. Marcus's favorite. The second glass had lipstick on the rim. Red lipstick. Dark and bold and unmistakable. Carrie didn't wear red lipstick. She never had. Her coloring was too fair, her mother always said. Red lipstick would make her look like a clown. So whose lips had touched this glass? A sound from upstairs. Muffled. Rhythmic. A headboard hitting a wall. Carrie's heart began to pound. Her hand trembled. The wine glass slipped from her fingers and shattered on the hardwood floor. Red wine spread across the boards like blood. She should leave. She knew she should leave. Get in her car, drive away, call Marcus and demand an explanation from a safe distance. But her feet were already moving, carrying her toward the stairs. Carrying her toward the truth she had been running from for months. Her hand found the banister. The wood was smooth beneath her palm, polished by 40 years of hands, her parents' hands, her grandparents' hands, her own hands as a child, sliding down the railing despite her mother's warnings. She climbed the stairs one at a time. Each step felt heavier than the last, like she was walking through water, like gravity had increased tenfold. The sounds grew louder, a woman's moan, a man's grunt, the squeak of bed springs. She recognized those sounds. She had made those sounds with Marcus 1,000 times, in their bedroom, in hotel rooms, in the back of his car when they were first dating and couldn't keep their hands off each other. The master bedroom door was closed. She stood outside it for a long moment. Her hand hovered over the doorknob. Her breath came in short, shallow gasps. Part of her wanted to turn around, to go back downstairs, to clean up the broken wine glass and wait for Marcus to come down with some perfectly reasonable explanation. The business associate is staying in the guest room. I didn't tell you because I wanted to surprise you. She's just a colleague, nothing more. But the moans continued, and the grunts, and the rhythmic thud of the headboard. The baby kicked, hard, right under Carrie's ribs, like she was trying to tell her mother something. Like she was saying, you need to see this, you need to know. Carrie turned the doorknob. The door swung open, and her world shattered into a million pieces. Marcus was in bed, naked, his back to the door, his muscles flexing with each thrust. A woman was beneath him, dark hair spread across the pillow like a fan, long legs wrapped around his waist, manicured nails raking down his back, leaving red trails in their wake. They were so absorbed in each other that they didn't hear the door open, didn't notice the pregnant woman standing in the doorway, didn't see the moment when everything changed. The scream that tore from Carrie's throat didn't sound human. It was primal, animal, the sound of a heart being ripped from a chest while still beating. Marcus spun around. His face went white. His eyes went wide. His mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. Carrie. His voice cracked. Oh God, Carrie. The woman sat up, slowly, deliberately, making no effort to cover herself. Her dark hair fell around her shoulders in perfect waves. Her makeup was smudged but still beautiful. Her body was slim and toned, and everything Carrie's pregnant body wasn't. Carrie recognized her. Danielle Vance, Marcus's executive assistant, the woman who had been working with him for 3 years, the woman who called during dinner at least twice a week, the woman who needed him for just one more thing at the office, just one more signature, just one more meeting, just one more late night. The woman who had smiled at Carrie at every company event, who had complimented her dresses, who had asked about the pregnancy with such apparent interest. The woman who had said just last month, "You're so lucky to have Marcus. He talks about you all the time. You can tell he really loves you." That woman was now sitting naked in Carrie's family cabin, in the bed where Carrie's parents had made love 40 years ago, with Carrie's husband still inside her. Danielle didn't bother covering herself. She just stared at Carrie with those cold blue eyes. No shame, no fear, no remorse, just irritation. Like Carrie was a fly that had interrupted her meal. "Well," Danielle said. Her voice was calm, almost bored. "This is awkward." Carrie's legs gave out. She grabbed the door frame to keep from falling. Her other hand went to her belly. The baby was kicking frantically now, sensing distress, sensing danger, sensing that everything was wrong. "It's okay," Carrie whispered. To the baby or to herself, she wasn't sure. "It's okay, it's okay, it's okay." But nothing was okay. Nothing would ever be okay again. Marcus scrambled out of bed. He grabbed a sheet to cover himself, suddenly modest after being caught in the most immodest act possible. His face was a mask of panic. His hands were shaking. "Carrie, listen to me." He moved toward her, his hands outstretched, palms up, like he was approaching a wild animal. "This isn't what it looks like," Carrie laughed. The sound was hollow, broken, edged with hysteria. It echoed off the walls of the bedroom, off the ceiling where she had traced patterns in the wooden beams as a child, off the windows where frost was creeping up the glass. "It looks like you're sleeping with your secretary." It didn't mean anything. Marcus was in front of her now, close enough to touch, close enough to smell. He reeked of sex and Danielle's perfume. It was a mistake, a terrible mistake. "I don't know what I was thinking." "How long?" Carrie asked. Her voice was steady now, strangely calm, like she was asking about the weather, like she was inquiring about dinner plans. "How long has this been going on?" Marcus hesitated. That hesitation told her everything. If it had been one time, he would have said so. If it had been a month, he would have confessed. But the way his eyes darted to Danielle, the way his jaw tightened, the way he swallowed before speaking. This wasn't new. This wasn't a mistake. This was a pattern. Danielle answered for him. 2 years. She was putting on a silk robe now, taking her time, tying the belt with casual elegance. "Since before the wedding, actually. Marcus and I have been together longer than you and he have." The world tilted. Carrie gripped the doorframe tighter. Her knuckles went white. Her vision blurred at the edges. For a moment, she thought she might faint. 2 years. Their entire marriage had been a lie. Every kiss, every "I love you," every time Marcus had looked into her eyes and promised to be faithful. All of it, every single moment, a lie. She thought about their wedding day. June 15th, the sun streaming through stained glass windows at St. Patrick's Cathedral, 300 guests in designer outfits, flowers imported from Holland, a 7-tier cake that had taken 3 days to assemble. Marcus waiting at the altar in his custom Armani tuxedo, smiling, handsome, the perfect groom. Had he been thinking about Danielle? Had he been wishing it was her walking down the aisle instead of Carrie? She thought about their honeymoon, 2 weeks in the Maldives, a private villa over crystal clear water. Marcus making love to her every night, whispering how beautiful she was, how lucky he was, how he would love her forever. Had he been texting Danielle between those whispered promises? Had he been counting the days until he could be with her again? She thought about the moment she told him that she was pregnant. They had been in their kitchen. A Sunday morning. Carrie had made pancakes, his favorite. She had hidden the positive test under his napkin. Marcus had seen it, had looked up at her with tears in his eyes, had lifted her off her feet and spun her around, laughing, crying, saying over and over, "We're going to be parents. We're going to be a family." Had that been real? Or had that been an act too? "Why?" Carrie whispered. The words scraped against her throat like broken glass. "Why did you marry me?" Marcus ran his hand through his hair, a nervous gesture, one she had seen 1,000 times. During business negotiations, during arguments, during moments of stress. He looked at the floor, at the ceiling, at the rumpled bed, anywhere but at her. "It was complicated," he said. "The business, your father's investments. I needed money." Carrie finished the sentence for him. "You needed my father's money." It wasn't just about money. Marcus finally met her eyes. Was that guilt she saw there, or just the fear of getting caught? "I cared about you. I still care about you. What we have is a lie." Carrie's voice was flat, dead. "What we have is a lie. What we've always had is a lie." Danielle stretched like a cat. Her robe gaped open, revealing smooth skin underneath. She seemed completely unbothered by the drama unfolding around her. "This is exhausting," she said. "I need a drink." She walked past Carrie without a second glance. Her shoulder brushed against Carrie's arm. Her perfume lingered in the air. Something expensive, something French, something Carrie had smelled on Marcus's shirts 100 times without questioning it. Dry cleaning, she had thought. It must be from the dry cleaner. God, she had been so stupid. Marcus reached for Carrie's hand. "Please, let me explain. Let's go downstairs and talk about this like adults." She pulled away from him. "Don't touch me." "Carrie, I said don't touch me." She backed out of the doorway. Her hand found the wall, the banister. She needed support, needed something solid to hold on to as her entire life crumbled around her. "I want to leave," she said. "Give me my car keys." Marcus shook his head. "You can't drive in this weather. The roads are closing. There's a blizzard coming." "I don't care." "I do." His voice hardened. Something shifted in his eyes, something cold, something calculating. "You're carrying my child, Carrie. I'm not going to let you kill yourself and the baby because you're upset." "Upset?" Carrie's voice rose. Cracked, broke. "You think I'm upset? You destroyed everything. Everything we built, everything I believed in, and you think I'm just upset?" She pushed past him and headed for the stairs. Her car keys were in her purse. She would drive through the blizzard. She would call her father. She would figure something out. Anything was better than staying here. Anything was better than breathing the same air as her cheating husband and his whore. But when she reached her purse, the keys were gone. She searched frantically. Dumped the contents on the couch. Wallet, phone, lipstick, tissues, no keys. Marcus stood at the top of the stairs, watching her. His expression was unreadable. "I took them," he said, "for your safety." "Give them back." "No." The word hung in the air between them. Final, absolute. Carrie felt the walls closing in. The cabin that had always felt like a sanctuary now felt like a prison. She was trapped. Trapped with her cheating husband and his mistress. Trapped while a blizzard raged outside. Trapped while her baby kicked and squirmed inside her, as if she too could sense the danger. Her phone, she would call her father. Edward Ashford could fix anything. He had lawyers on retainer, security teams on standby, private planes ready to take off at a moment's notice. She grabbed her phone from the pile of belongings on the couch, pulled it up, stared at the screen. No signal. She walked to the window, held the phone up, moved it around, searching for even a single bar. Nothing. The storm had knocked out the cell towers. Or maybe the mountains were blocking the signal. Or maybe God was just having a particularly cruel laugh at her expense. From the kitchen, she heard Danielle laugh. The sound was light and musical, like wind chimes, like poison. Carrie sank onto the couch. Her hand rested on her belly. The baby was still now. quiet, as if she sensed her mother's despair and was trying to offer comfort through stillness. This isn't happening, Carrie thought. This cannot be happening. But it was, and the nightmare was only beginning. The fire crackled and popped in the silence. Carrie sat on the couch, watching the flames dance behind the glass doors of the fireplace. Orange and red and yellow. Beautiful, really. Her father had built that fireplace with his own hands, had carried the stones from a quarry 20 miles away, had spent 3 months getting it just right. Everything in this cabin had been built with love, with care, with the intention of creating memories that would last for generations. Now those memories were tainted, poisoned, as ruined as her marriage. Her mind raced through the past 3 years. Every moment she had shared with Marcus, every kiss, every touch, every whispered promise in the dark. Their first date, a charity gala at her father's country club. Carrie had worn a blue dress that matched her eyes. Marcus had worn a smile that made her heart skip. He had asked her to dance, had held her close, had said, "I've been wanting to meet you for months. Your father speaks so highly of you." Warning sign number 1. He had known who her father was, had targeted her specifically, had used Edward Ashford's name to get an introduction. She hadn't seen it then. She saw it now. Their engagement, 6 months after they started dating. Marcus had taken her to Paris, had proposed at the top of the Eiffel Tower, had slipped a 5-carat diamond onto her finger while tourists applauded. "I want to spend the rest of my life making you happy," he had said. Lies. All lies. Their wedding day. The dress had cost $40,000. The flowers had cost another $20,000. Her father had spared no expense, had given her the fairy tale she had always dreamed of. Marcus had cried during the ceremony, actual tears rolling down his cheeks as he said his vows. "I promise to love you, to honor you, to protect you in sickness and in health, for richer or poorer, until death do us part." Had he been thinking about Danielle? Had he been imagining her face instead of Carrie's? The sound of footsteps on the stairs pulled her from her thoughts. Marcus came down dressed now, dark cashmere sweater, designer jeans, leather loafers. He looked like the man she had married, the man she had loved, the man she had trusted with her life, in her heart, and her future. She didn't recognize him anymore. "We should talk," he said. "I have nothing to say to you." "Carrie, please." He crossed the room, sat on the ottoman across from her, his hands clasped between his knees, his eyes filled with what looked like genuine remorse. "I know you're angry. You have every right to be angry. But we need to figure this out. We need to think about the future." "What future?" Carrie asked. Her voice was hollow, empty. "You've been sleeping with another woman for 2 years. Our entire marriage has been a lie. What is there to figure out?" "Our future, the baby's future." He leaned forward, his eyes locked onto hers. "I made a mistake, a terrible mistake. But I'm willing to work on our marriage. We can go to counseling. We can start over. We can—" "Stop." The word cut through his excuses like a knife. "Just stop," Carrie said. "Every word out of your mouth is a lie. Every word has always been a lie. I can't listen to it anymore." Danielle appeared in the doorway. She had changed into a silk dress, emerald green. The color made her eyes look even bluer. She held a wine glass in one hand, already half empty. "Oh, please, Marcus," she said, "stop pretending. It's embarrassing." Marcus shot her a warning look. "Danny, not now." "Why not?" Danielle walked into the room. Her heels clicked against the hardwood floor. She perched on the arm of Marcus's chair, crossing her long legs. Territorial. Possessive. "She's going to find out eventually." "Might as well be honest for once in your life." Carrie's stomach turned. "Find out what?" Marcus and Danielle exchanged a look. Something passed between them. Some silent communication that excluded Carrie completely. The kind of look that comes from years of intimacy, years of shared secrets, years of living a double life. "It's not just about the affair," Danielle said. She sipped her wine. Casual, relaxed, like they were discussing weekend plans instead of the destruction of a marriage. "There's more. A lot more, actually." "Danny, I said not now." "Oh, stop trying to protect her. She's not a child." Danielle's eyes fixed on Carrie with something like triumph, like victory, like a predator that had finally cornered its prey. "I'm pregnant," The words hung in the air. Carrie couldn't breathe, couldn't think, couldn't process what she was hearing. Her hand went to her own belly, where her baby, her and Marcus's baby, kicked against her palm. 6 weeks along, Danielle continued. She ran her hand over her flat stomach. We found out last month. Marcus was so excited. Weren't you, darling? Marcus put his head in his hands. Carrie's world shattered. Again, the pieces fell around her like broken glass. She had thought the affair was the worst of it. She had been wrong. So terribly wrong. You got her pregnant. Her voice was barely a whisper. While I was carrying your child, you got another woman pregnant. It wasn't planned. Marcus looked up. His eyes were red, wet. It just happened. We were careful, but nothing just happens, Marcus. Carrie's voice grew stronger, harder. You made choices. Every single day for 2 years, you made choices. And none of those choices were me. None of those choices were our family. You chose her. Over and over again, you chose her. I can explain. Explain what? Carrie stood up. Her legs were shaky, but they held. The baby shifted inside her, restless and anxious. Explain how you've been living a double life for years. Explain how you've been playing house with your mistress while pretending to build a family with your wife. Explain how you're going to be a father to 2 children by 2 different women. She laughed. The sound was bitter, broken. Actually, don't explain. I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear anything from you ever again. She turned and walked toward the sliding glass door that led to the deck. She needed air. She needed space. She needed to get away from the suffocating presence of their lies. Where are you going? Marcus asked. Outside, I need to breathe something that isn't poisoned by your betrayal. You shouldn't go outside. The storm is getting worse. Carrie ignored him. She slid the door open. The cold hit her immediately. Sharp, clean, biting. It cleared her head, made her feel something other than numbness. She stepped onto the deck, closed the door behind her, stood at the railing and let the snow fall on her face. The temperature had dropped it even further. Her sweater was no protection against the wind. But she didn't care. The physical cold was easier to bear than the emotional devastation waiting for her inside. Through the window, she could see Marcus and Danielle. They were talking, arguing from the looks of it. Marcus was gesturing. Danielle was shaking her head. Their mouths moved, but she couldn't hear the words through the glass. Then Danielle set down her wine glass, said something to Marcus, walked toward the door. Carrie watched her approach, didn't understand what was happening, didn't comprehend the danger until it was too late. Danielle reached the door. Her hand found the lock. Their eyes met through the glass. For a moment, time seemed to stop. What are you doing? Carrie asked. Her voice was muffled by the barrier between them. Danielle smiled, sweet as sugar, cold as the storm. The lock clicked. Enjoy the snow, sweetheart. Carrie lunged for the door. Her hands found the handle. She pulled. The door didn't move. She pulled again, harder, using all her weight. Nothing. Danielle, open this door. Open this door right now. But Danielle was already walking away. Her silk dress swished against her legs. She bent down and picked up her wine glass, took a sip, didn't look back. Marcus! Carrie pounded on the glass. Marcus, help me! She locked me out! Marcus! She saw him through the window, saw his face register what had happened, saw him start to move toward the door. Then Danielle's hand on his arm, her lips against his ear, whispering something, her body pressing against his. Marcus hesitated. His pregnant wife was locked outside in a blizzard, 8 months pregnant, wearing nothing but a thin sweater, and he hesitated. Carrie watched in disbelief as Danielle led him toward the stairs, watched as he glanced back at her, something unreadable in his eyes, watched as he made his choice. Again, he chose Danielle. Again. The bedroom door closed behind them. Carrie screamed. She screamed until her throat was raw. She pounded on the glass until her fists were red and bruised. She kicked at the door until her legs ached and her ballet slippers were shredded. Nothing. The storm swallowed every sound. The triple-pane glass muffled every cry. The cabin that had always been her sanctuary had become her prison, her tomb. She pressed her forehead against the glass. Her breath fogged the surface in rapid bursts. With fingers that were already going numb, she traced a word. Help. It faded almost instantly, like it was never there, like she was never there. She sank to her knees on the snow-covered deck. The cold seeped through her pants, through her skin, into her bones. I'm going to die out here, she thought. The realization was strangely calm, detached, like it was happening to someone else. Me and my baby, we're going to freeze to death while my husband sleeps with another woman 10 feet away. The wind howled, the temperature dropped, the night stretched on, and nobody came. Time moved strangely in the cold. Minutes felt like hours, hours felt like years. Carrie's thoughts fragmented and reformed like snowflakes in the wind. She had found a small alcove against the cabin wall where the roof overhang blocked some of the wind. It wasn't much, but it was something. A small mercy in a merciless night. She curled into the smallest ball her pregnant body would allow. Her arms wrapped around her belly, her chin tucked to her chest, trying to conserve whatever warmth remained. The baby moved, sluggish now, slower than usual. Was that because she was cold too? Could babies feel the cold inside the womb? Carrie didn't know. There was so much she didn't know about being a mother, so much she had planned to learn. Books she had bought but hadn't read yet. Classes she had signed up for but hadn't attended yet. Conversations she had planned to have with her own mother about labor and nursing and the thousand small challenges of raising a child. Now she might never have those conversations, might never read those books, might never hold her daughter in her arms. The thought broke something inside her. Memories flooded in, unbidden, unwelcome, relentless. The first time she met Marcus, it was a charity gala at her father's country club, a fundraiser for children's cancer research. Carrie had shared the event herself, spending months on the planning, guest lists and seating charts and silent auction items. She remembered standing by the bar, exhausted but satisfied. The event had been a success. They had raised over $2 million for the hospital. And then he was there, tall and handsome in a perfectly tailored suit, dark hair swept back from his forehead, eyes the color of whiskey, a smile that made her stomach flip. You must be Caroline Ashford, he had said. Your father speaks so highly of you. Warning sign. He had known who she was, had approached her deliberately, had used her father's name as an introduction. She hadn't seen it then, had been too dazzled by his charm, too flattered by his attention, too ready to believe that this beautiful man could actually want her. I'm Marcus Whitmore, he had said. I work in finance. Your father and I have done some business together. They had talked for an hour, then two. He had made her laugh, had asked about her work, her interests, her dreams, had seemed genuinely interested in her answers. Looking back now, she could see it for what it was. Research, reconnaissance, a predator studying his prey. But at the time, she had thought it was love at first sight, their first kiss. A month after the gala, he had taken her to dinner at a French restaurant in Manhattan. They had shared wine and conversation and creme brulee. Walking her to her car afterward, he had stopped under a streetlight, had looked at her with those whiskey eyes, had said, I've wanted to do this since the moment I met you. And then he had kissed her, soft and sweet and perfect. She had floated home that night, had called her mother at midnight to gush about the amazing man she had met, had fallen asleep with a smile on her face. Had he been seeing Danielle then? Had he kissed her with those same lips just hours later? The questions tortured her. Their engagement. Marcus had flown her to Paris, first class. They had stayed at the Ritz, had eaten at restaurants with more stars than tables, had walked along the Seine at sunset. On their last night, he had taken her to the Eiffel Tower, had gotten down on one knee at the very top with all of Paris glittering below them. Caroline Margaret Ashford, he had said. His voice had trembled, his eyes had glistened with tears. You are the most incredible woman I've ever known. Will you do me the honor of becoming my wife? She had said yes. Of course she had said yes. How could she say anything else? The ring was a 5-carat diamond, flawless. Harry Winston. Her father had quietly mentioned later that Marcus had charged it to a company account, an account funded by Edward Ashford's investments. Another warning sign she had ignored. Their wedding. 300 guests. St. Patrick's Cathedral. A reception at the plaza. Every detail perfect, every moment photographed, every smile captured for posterity. Danielle had been there. The memories surfaced now sharp and clear. Danielle in a pale blue dress, fourth row from the front, smiling throughout the ceremony. Had she smiled when Marcus said his vows? Had she known those vows were lies? I, Marcus David Whitmore, take you, Caroline Margaret Ashford, to be my lawfully wedded wife, to have and to hold from this day forward, for better, for worse, for richer, for poorer, in sickness and in health, to love and to cherish until the death do us part. Death, the word echoed in Carrie's frozen mind. Until death do us part. Was this what he had meant? Had he been planning to let death part them from the beginning? The baby moved again, a weak flutter, so different from her usual strong kicks. Stay with me, Carrie whispered. Her voice was hoarse, cracked. Please, baby, please stay with me. I need you to be strong. I need you to fight. She thought about the nursery she had decorated, spent weeks choosing the perfect shade of yellow for the walls. Not too bright, not too pale. Sunshine yellow, the paint chip had called it. She had hung a mobile of butterflies over the crib. Monarchs and swallowtails and painted ladies. Each one hand-painted by an artist in Vermont. Each one delicate and beautiful and perfect. She had filled the shelves with books. Goodnight Moon and Where the Wild Things Are and The Very Hungry Caterpillar. She had imagined reading them aloud, imagined Eleanor's face lighting up at the pictures, imagined falling asleep together in the rocking chair by the window. Now those images felt like fantasies, dreams that would never come true. The cold was getting worse. She couldn't feel her fingers anymore, couldn't feel her toes. Her body was shutting down, directing all remaining warmth to her vital organs. To her baby, at least there was that. At least her body was still trying to protect her daughter, even as it slowly died. She thought about the moment she had told Marcus she was pregnant. It was a Sunday morning in June. They had been married for almost 2 years. She had just confirmed the pregnancy the day before. 3 positive tests and a blood draw at her doctor's office. She had made pancakes for breakfast. Marcus's favorite, blueberry with real maple syrup. She had hidden the positive test under his napkin. He had unfolded the napkin, had seen the test, had looked at her with tears in his eyes. We're going to have a baby? His voice had broken. We're going to be parents? She had nodded, crying too. He had jumped up from the table, had lifted her off her feet and spun her around, had kissed her face over and over while laughing and crying at the same time. I'm going to be a dad, he had kept saying. I can't believe I'm going to be a dad. Had any of it been real? Had he told Danielle that same day? Had they laughed together about how easily Carrie had been fooled? Had they made plans for after the baby was born, when Marcus would divorce his wife and marry his mistress? The not knowing was almost worse than the cold. Carrie closed her eyes, just for a moment, just to rest. The memories continued to flood, faster now, more fragmented. Her mother's voice. You deserve someone who looks at you like your father looks at me. Her father's voice. If he ever hurts you, sweetheart, I'll destroy him. I don't care how much it costs. I don't care what I have to do. No one hurts my little girl. Beth's voice. Are you sure about him, Carrie? Something about him seems too good to be true. Warning signs, all of them. Warning signs she had ignored because she wanted so badly to believe in the fairy tale. She had been so naive, so trusting, so desperate to be loved that she had accepted a counterfeit version and called it the real thing. The wind shifted. Snow blew directly into her alcove, coating her hair and her eyelashes and her lips. She was too cold to brush it away. Her thoughts began to fragment. Words and images and feelings mixing together like watercolors in the rain. The white dress, the blue eyes, the red wine, the cold snow, the locked door, the smile. Enjoy the snow, sweetheart. She thought about her daughter, the little girl she would never meet, Eleanor Margaret Whitmore, a strong name for a girl who would never have the chance to be strong. I'm sorry, Carrie thought. I'm so sorry I couldn't protect you. I'm sorry I trusted the wrong person. I'm sorry I brought you into a world with a father who didn't want you and a mother who couldn't save you. The baby moved one more time, a tiny flutter, like a butterfly's wing. Then nothing. Carrie began to cry. The tears froze on her cheeks almost instantly. Ice tracks down her face, a frozen river of grief. She had survived so much in her life, had built herself into someone strong, someone capable, someone who didn't need a man to define her worth. But this was too much. The cold, the betrayal, the realization that she had been a fool for 3 years, the knowledge that she was going to die in a place she had always loved, killed by people she had trusted. She closed her eyes. The snow covered her like a blanket, white and soft and final. And somewhere in the distance, barely audible above the howling wind, came the sound of an engine. Edward Ashford had never trusted Marcus Whitmore. He had smiled at the wedding, had given a toast praising his new son-in-law's ambition and intelligence and charm, had written a check for $2 million as a wedding gift and another $5 million as an investment in Marcus's fund. He had done all the things a supportive father was supposed to do. But late at night, when Margaret was asleep beside him and the house was quiet, Edward worried. Something about Marcus felt wrong. Too polished, too smooth, too perfect. He said all the right things at all the right times. He agreed with everything Edward said. He laughed at all of Edward's jokes. No one was that agreeable. No one was that charming without an ulterior motive. Edward had built a $3 billion empire by trusting his instincts. He had bet everything on gut feelings when the number said he should fold. He had walked away from deals that looked perfect on paper because something in his stomach said run. His instincts had never been wrong, not once in 40 years. His instincts told him Marcus Whitmore was a snake. But Carrie loved him, and Edward loved Carrie more than his money, more than his company, more than his own life, so he had kept his doubts to himself, had hoped he was wrong, had prayed that his little girl had found genuine happiness. Tonight, his instincts were screaming. It started around 6 o'clock, a restlessness he couldn't explain, a tightness in his chest that had nothing to do with his heart. He had tried to read, tried to watch television, tried to focus on the quarterly reports that needed his attention. Nothing worked. He kept thinking about Carrie, about the cabin, about the blizzard that was blanketing Vermont in snow. He called her phone. It went straight to voicemail. "Hey, sweetheart, it's Dad, just checking in. Give me a call when you get this. Love you." An hour passed, no call back. He tried again, same result. He called Marcus's phone. "Edward, hello." Marcus's voice was smooth, untroubled. "What can I do for you?" "I've been trying to reach Carrie. Is everything all right?" "Everything's fine. The storm knocked out the cell service up here. She's resting right now. The drive wore her out." "I see. Well, have her call me when she wakes up." "Will do. No need to worry, Edward. I'm taking good care of your daughter." The words were reassuring. The tone was perfect. But something in Edward's gut twisted. "I'm taking good care of your daughter." Why had that sounded like a threat? He tried Carrie's phone again at 8, at 9, at 10, voicemail every time. He called Marcus again at 11. "Edward, she's sleeping. I told you the service is out. I'm sure she'll call you first thing in the morning." "Let me talk to her." "She's asleep, Edward. I don't want to wake her. The pregnancy has been exhausting her lately." "Wake her." A pause, just a heartbeat too long. "I really don't think that's necessary. She needs her rest." "Marcus, I want to talk to my daughter, now." Another pause. "Fine, hold on." The line went quiet. Edward could hear muffled movement, footsteps on stairs, a door opening. Then Marcus's voice again. Too quick, too smooth. "She's not in the bedroom. She must be in the bathroom, and let me check." More muffled sounds, more waiting. She stepped outside for some air. I'll have her call you as soon as she comes back in." "Outside in a blizzard?" "Just on the deck. She said she needed to clear her head. You know how pregnant women are, hormones and all that." The words were casual, dismissive, and completely wrong. Carrie hated the cold, had hated it ever since she was a little girl. She refused to go outside in winter without multiple layers. The idea of her standing on a deck in a blizzard, 8 months pregnant, in the middle of the night, it didn't make sense. "Marcus, tell me what's really going on." "Nothing's going on, Edward. Everything is fine, you're overreacting. I've never overreacted in my life. There's a first time for everything. Look, I need to go check on Carrie. I'll have her call you tomorrow. The line went dead. Edward stared at his phone for a long moment. His heart was pounding. His hands were shaking. Something was wrong. Something was very, very wrong. He called his head of security. Vincent had worked for Edward for 25 years. Former Special Forces. Completely loyal. Completely capable. I need the cabin checked, Edward said. Now. Sir, the roads are closed. State police are turning everyone back. It's a level 3 emergency. I don't care. Get someone up there. It's not possible, sir. Even with four-wheel drive, the drifts are too deep. We'd get stuck before we made it halfway. Edward hung up, grabbed his keys from the hook by the door, headed for the garage. Margaret was in the hallway before he reached it. She had heard his phone calls, had watched his pacing, had seen the fear growing in his eyes. Where are you going? She asked. Vermont. Something's wrong with Carrie. Edward, it's a blizzard. You can't drive in this. I have to. I can feel it, Maggie. Something's wrong. Something's happened to our girl. Margaret studied her husband's face. After 40 years of marriage, she knew that look. It was the same look he'd had when he'd canceled a meeting to rush to Carrie's elementary school because he'd had a feeling she was sick. She had been. Appendicitis. The doctor said another hour and it would have burst. It was the same look he'd had when he'd insisted they change their flight home from London because something felt off. The original flight had been delayed for mechanical issues. Mechanical issues that turned out to be a faulty landing gear. Edward Ashford's instincts had saved lives before. She wouldn't argue with them now. Bring our girl home, she said. I'll be praying. He kissed her forehead. I love you. I love you too. Now go. Edward's Range Rover had been modified for extreme conditions. Snow tires with tungsten studs, reinforced suspension, a winch mounted on the front bumper capable of pulling 12,000 pounds, spotlights that could illuminate a football field. He had bought it for hunting trips but rarely used it. Tonight it might save his daughter's life. The drive from Connecticut to Vermont should have taken 4 hours. In the blizzard, with the roads closed and the visibility near zero, it took 6. Edward pushed through everything. Road closures, state trooper warnings, drifts that came up to his headlights. He drove with the intensity of a man possessed, with the focus of a man who had built an empire from nothing, with the desperation of a father who would burn the world to save his child. He talked to Carrie in his head the whole way. Hold on, sweetheart. I'm coming. Just hold on. When he finally reached the cabin, the first thing he noticed was the lights. Every window was glowing. The whole place looked warm and welcoming. Smoke curled from the chimney, a picture of domestic comfort. The second thing he noticed was the silence. He killed the engine, stepped out into the storm. The wind nearly knocked him over. Snow drove into his face, blinding him. Carrie, he called. Carolyn? His voice was swallowed by the wind. He walked toward the front door, rang the bell, knocked. No response. He circled the cabin, checked each window. Through the glass, he could see the living room, the fire burning in the hearth, 2 wine glasses on the coffee table. No people. He continued around the building, his flashlight cutting through the swirling snow. And then he found her. She was curled against the wall beneath the deck overhang, covered in snow, still as stone. Her cream sweater was soaked through and frozen stiff. Her hair was white with ice. Her skin was the color of marble. Edward's heart stopped. Carolyn? He fell to his knees beside her. His hands found her face. Cold, so impossibly cold. Carolyn, look at me. Wake up, sweetheart. Look at me. Her eyes were closed. Her lips were blue. Her breathing was so shallow he could barely detect it. But she was breathing. She was alive. That's my girl, Edward whispered. Tears froze on his cheeks as they fell. That's my fighter. Stay with me, sweetheart. I'm here now. Daddy's here. He checked for a pulse. Found one. Faint but steady. He scooped her up in his arms. She weighed almost nothing despite the pregnancy. Her body was limp, unresponsive, frozen stiff. He carried her to the Range Rover, set her in the passenger seat, cranked the heat to maximum, wrapped her in every emergency blanket he had. Then he called 911. I need an ambulance at the Ashford cabin on Mountain Ridge Road. My daughter has severe hypothermia. She's 8 months pregnant. This is Edward Ashford. I don't care what you have to do. Get here now. He gave the dispatcher the GPS coordinates, emphasized the pregnancy, emphasized the emergency. Then he made another call. Vincent, I need a team at the cabin right now, tonight. Sir, I told you the roads. I don't care about the roads. Find a way. Use snowmobiles, use helicopters. I don't care how you do it. But I need men at this cabin within the hour. What's happened, sir? Someone tried to kill my daughter. Edward's voice was ice, colder than the storm outside. And the people who did it are still inside that cabin. No one leaves, no one. Do you understand me? Understood, sir. And Vincent, when you get there, you might need to restrain me. Because if they've hurt her, if they've hurt my grandchild, Edward took a shaky breath. I'll kill them myself. He hung up and turned back to Carrie. She still hadn't moved, but her cheeks were starting to pink up, just barely, just enough to give him hope. Who did this to you? He whispered, stroking her frozen hair. Who did this to my baby girl? Through the cabin window, he saw movement. Marcus and Danielle were coming down the stairs, both of them dressed now, both of them looking rumpled and satisfied. They walked into the living room, completely oblivious to the drama unfolding outside. Marcus poured himself a drink. Scotch, from the look of it. He handed a second glass to Danielle. They clinked glasses, smiled at each other, kissed. They had no idea that Edward had found Carrie. No idea that help was on the way. No idea that their lives were about to be destroyed. Edward watched them through the window. His jaw was clenched so tight his teeth ached. His hands gripped the steering wheel like he wanted to strangle it. He had built an empire by being patient, by waiting for the right moment, by striking when his enemies least expected it. He would be patient now. He would wait until Carrie was safe, until the baby was delivered, until the evidence was gathered and the case was airtight, and then he would destroy them. Not just their careers, not just their reputations, not just their bank accounts, everything. He would take everything they had and everything they ever hoped to have. He would leave them with nothing but the memory of what they had done and the knowledge that they would pay for it until the day they died. In the distance, sirens began to wail. Red and blue lights appeared on the horizon, fighting through the storm. Help was coming, and for Marcus and Danielle, so was the reckoning. The ambulance arrived in a blaze of lights and noise. Paramedics swarmed the Range Rover. They assessed Carrie with practiced efficiency, checking her vitals, starting an IV, wrapping her in thermal blankets that generated their own heat. Core temperature is 84 degrees, one of them called out. Severe hypothermia. We need to transport immediately. The baby, Edward said. His voice cracked. She's 8 months pregnant. Is the baby? We're doing everything we can, sir. We need to get her to the hospital. Are you riding with us? Try to stop me. The drive to Bursington Medical Center took 45 minutes. Edward held Carrie's hand the entire way, willing his warmth into her frozen fingers. He watched the monitors, watched the paramedics work, watched his daughter's face for any sign of consciousness. She didn't wake up, didn't move, didn't respond to any stimuli, but her heart kept beating. And as long as her heart was beating, there was hope. At the hospital, they whisked her away immediately. Emergency C-section. The baby was in distress. They couldn't wait. Edward wasn't allowed in the operating room. He stood outside the doors, watching through the small window, as a team of doctors and nurses worked to save the two people he loved most in the world. A nurse appeared at his side. Mr. Ashford, is there someone we can call for you? My wife, Margaret Ashford. She's in Connecticut. She's arranging a flight. Anyone else? Edward thought about Marcus, about calling the man who was supposed to be here. The man who was supposed to be pacing this hallway, terrified for his wife and child. Instead, Marcus was at the cabin, probably in bed with his mistress, probably had no idea his wife had been found, probably assumed she was already dead. No, Edward said, there's no one else. The surgery took 2 hours. Edward paced the length of the waiting room approximately 700 times. He counted the tiles on the ceiling, the chairs along the wall, the number of times the automatic doors opened and closed. He called Margaret every 30 minutes with updates that were always the same. No news yet. Vincent checked in at 2 in the morning. His team had reached the cabin. Marcus and Danielle were secured. What does that mean? Edward asked. It means they're not going anywhere, sir. We told them the roads were too dangerous and offered to stay for their protection. They didn't argue. They have no idea about Carrie? No, sir. They seem completely unaware. Keep it that way. I'll deal with them after. Understood, sir. One more thing. We found security camera footage. External cameras you installed a few years ago. They record to a cloud server. Edward had forgotten about those cameras. He'd installed them after a series of cabin break-ins in the area. Basic security precaution. What do they show? Everything, sir. The woman, Danielle Vance, locking the door, walking away, not looking back once. Marcus looking through the window and then going upstairs with her. All of it. Time-stamped and crystal clear. Edward closed his eyes. Save everything. Multiple copies. Make sure nothing can be deleted or corrupted. Already done, sir. At 4:15 in the morning, the surgeon emerged from the operating room. Dr. Patricia Okonkwo was in her 50s, calm and competent and exhausted. Her scrubs were spotted with blood. Her face was lined with fatigue, but she was smiling. Mr. Ashford, Edward rushed toward her. My daughter, my granddaughter. Are they? They're both alive. Dr. Okonkwo removed her surgical cap, revealing gray-streaked hair plastered with sweat. It was touch and go for a while. Your daughter's heart stopped twice on the table. We had to perform emergency procedures to revive her. But she's stable now. Edward's legs went weak. He grabbed the wall for support. And the baby? A girl, delivered at 34 weeks. She's small, 4 pounds, 11 ounces, but she's breathing on her own. That's a very good sign. We have her in the NICU as a precaution, but her vitals are strong. Can I see them? Your daughter will be in recovery for several hours. She's still unconscious, but we expect her to wake up soon. You can see the baby now if you'd like. Edward followed the doctor through a maze of corridors. Everything was white and sterile and humming with machines. The smell of antiseptic made his eyes water. The NICU was a room full of incubators. Tiny babies connected to wires and tubes and monitors, each one fighting for life in their own small way. Dr. Okonkwo led him to an incubator near the window. Inside, a tiny infant lay sleeping. Pink skin, dark hair, perfect miniature fingers curled into fists. His granddaughter. Edward pressed his palm against the glass. Tears streamed down his face unchecked. He didn't care. Let the nurses see. Let the whole world see. His daughter was alive. His granddaughter was alive. Everything else could wait. Hello, little one, he whispered. I'm your grandfather, Edward. Your mom calls me Dad, but you can call me Papa, or Grandpa, or whatever you want, really. I'm not picky. The baby stirred. Her eyes flickered, but didn't open. I know you've had a rough start, Edward continued, but you're an Ashford. We don't give up. We fight, we survive, and we take care of our own. He thought about Marcus, about Danielle, about what they had done. I'm going to make sure no one ever hurts you or your mother again. I promise you that. On my life, I promise. Margaret arrived at 6 in the morning. She had chartered a private plane from Westchester, landing in Burlington as soon as the runway was clear. She rushed into the hospital like a woman possessed, found Edward in the NICU, collapsed into his arms. Margaret couldn't finish the sentence. She's alive. They're both alive. Margaret wept, great shuddering sobs that shook her entire body. 40 years of marriage, and Edward had only seen her cry like this 3 times. When her mother died, when Carrie was born, and now, I want to see her. She's still in recovery. We can see the baby. Edward led her to the incubator. Margaret gasped when she saw the tiny infant inside. Oh, Edward, she's beautiful. She looks like Carrie did when she was born. Remember? I remember. Margaret pressed her hand against the glass, mirroring Edward's gesture from hours before. We have to protect them, both of them. We will. What happened up there? At the cabin? Edward told her. Everything. The affair, the pregnancy, The locked door, the security footage. Margaret's face went from grief to shock to fury in the span of a minute. Marcus knew? She asked. He knew Carrie was locked outside and he didn't help her? There's text evidence. He told Danielle to keep her out. I'll kill him. Margaret's voice was deadly calm. I'll kill them both. No need. Edward took his wife's hand. I'll destroy them, legally, completely. By the time I'm done, they'll wish they were dead. Around noon, Carrie woke up. Edward and Margaret were at her bedside when her eyes fluttered open. She looked around the room with confusion, taking in the hospital equipment, the IV in her arm, the bandage on her abdomen. Where? Her voice was a whisper, hoarse from the cold, from the screaming, from everything. You're in the hospital, sweetheart. Margaret squeezed her hand. You're safe now. Carrie's eyes went wide. Her hand flew to her belly, found it flat, empty. The baby. Panic seized her voice. Where's my baby? Is she... She's fine. Edward moved closer. His voice was gentle, reassuring. She's in the NICU. She's small, but she's healthy. She's breathing on her own. She's going to be okay. Tears streamed down Carrie's face. I thought we were both going to die. But you didn't. Margaret stroked her daughter's hair. You're both alive. You're both fighters. How did you find me? Carrie looked at her father. The storm. The roads were closed. How? I had a feeling, Edward said simply. I couldn't reach you on the phone. Something felt wrong, so I drove up there. In a blizzard? I'd drive through hell itself for you, Caroline. You know that. Carrie closed her eyes. More tears escaped beneath her lashes. He knew. Marcus knew she locked me out. He looked right at me through the window, and then he walked away. I know. He left me to die. He left me and the baby to Boz so he could be with her. I know, sweetheart, and he's going to pay for it. I promise you that. The door opened. A nurse entered, pushing a small, wheeled bassinet. Someone wanted to meet her mother, the nurse said with a smile. She's been asking for you. Carrie struggled to sit up. Her parents helped her, adjusting pillows behind her back. The nurse lifted the tiny bundle from the bassinet and placed her in Carrie's arms. For a long moment, Carrie just stared. Her daughter, her miracle, the baby she had fought to protect through the longest, coldest night of her life. Eleanor was small, so small it seemed impossible that she could be real. But she was warm and breathing and looking up at Carrie with dark eyes that held all the wisdom of the universe. Hi, Eleanor, Carrie whispered. I'm your mom, and I'm so happy to meet you. The baby blinked, made a small sound, not quite a cry, more like acknowledgement. Margaret took a photo on her phone. Edward pretended he wasn't crying. And for just a moment, despite everything that had happened and everything that was still to come, the room was filled with something like peace. Marcus Whitmore arrived at the hospital around 4 in the afternoon. He had finally figured out that something was wrong when Vincent's team refused to let him leave the cabin. He had demanded explanations, made threats, tried to call his lawyer. Vincent had simply handed him a satellite phone with Edward on the other end. Get to Burlington Medical Center, now. And don't even think about running. Marcus had driven through the remnants of the blizzard with Danielle in the passenger seat. Neither of them spoke. Neither of them knew what was waiting for them. At the hospital entrance, Vincent's men intercepted Danielle. You're not going in, one of them said. Excuse me? Danielle's voice was sharp. My boyfriend is in there. His wife is... The police are on their way to speak with you, Ms. Vance. You'll wait here. Danielle's face went pale. For the first time since the cabin, a crack appeared in her composure. Police? What are you talking about? What's happening? The security guard didn't answer. Marcus made it as far as the 3rd floor before Edward intercepted him. The two men faced each other in the hospital corridor. Marcus was taller, younger, broader in the shoulders. But Edward had something Marcus would never possess. The quiet certainty of a man who had conquered every obstacle in his path for 4 decades. Where's my wife? Marcus demanded. What happened to her? Your security people won't tell me anything. She's in recovery, Edward said. His voice was calm, almost pleasant, like they were discussing stock prices. Emergency C-section last night. The baby's in the NICU. Tai. Oh, thank God. Marcus's shoulders sagged with what appeared to be relief. I need to see her. I need to see them both. He moved a step around Edward. Edward didn't budge. Was, Edward said. What? You said she's your wife. The correct tense is was. She was your wife. Past tense. Marcus's expression shifted, confusion giving way to wariness. Edward, I don't understand. Is Carrie okay? What's going on? She's alive. No thanks to you. What's that supposed to mean? Edward took a step closer. His voice dropped to barely above a whisper. Anyone walking past would see two men having a civil conversation. They wouldn't see the murder in Edward's eyes. I found her, Marcus. Frozen. Blue. Nearly dead. On the deck of my cabin, where your mistress locked her out during a blizzard. The color drained from Marcus's face. I don't know what you're talking about. The storm knocked out the power. Carrie must have gotten confused. We were looking for her all night. You were looking for her? Edward's voice was ice. Is that why the security cameras show you going upstairs with Danielle 10 minutes after she locked the door? Is that why your text messages tell her to keep Carrie outside? Marcus's mouth opened, closed, opened again. How did you? I have cameras at the cabin. I've had them for years. Cloud backup, timestamps, everything. Edward smiled. It was not a pleasant smile. You should have done your research, Marcus. You should have known who you were dealing with. Edward, listen to me. This is all a misunderstanding. I didn't know Danielle had locked the door. I thought Carrie was just being dramatic. I thought she'd come back inside when she calmed down. So you went to bed with your mistress while your pregnant wife froze to death 10 feet away. I didn't know she was in danger. I swear to God, I didn't know. Edward reached into his pocket, pulled out his phone, played a recording. Marcus's voice, tinny but unmistakable. Make sure she doesn't come back inside. I need time to think. Danielle's voice. Consider it done. Marcus closed his eyes. You have 30 seconds to leave this building, Edward said, before I do something that will put both of us in prison. You can't keep me from my wife. You can't keep me from my daughter. Watch me. I have rights. I have lawyers. You can't just... 30 seconds. Edward's voice was flat, final. And then I stopped being civilized. Marcus looked around. Hospital security was watching. Vincent's men were watching. A group of nurses had gathered at the end of the hall, drawn by the tension in the air. He was outmanned, outmaneuvered, outclassed. This isn't over, Marcus said. No, it isn't. It's just beginning. Edward took another step forward. I built an empire, Marcus, from nothing, with my bare hands and my brain and my willingness to do whatever it took. You really think you can beat me? You with your borrowed money and your fake charm and your pathetic little schemes? He shook his head. I'm going to destroy you. Not threaten, not consider. Destroy every business connection, every social standing, every cent you've ever touched. I'm going to take everything you have and everything you ever hope to have. And when I'm done, when you're living in some basement apartment, eating ramen noodles and wondering where it all went wrong, I want you to remember this moment. I want you to remember that I warned you. Marcus turned and walked away. He didn't look back. That evening, Detective Frank Morrison arrived at the hospital to take Carrie's statement. Morrison was in his early 50s, salt and pepper hair, kind eyes set in a weathered face. He had the air of a man who had seen every terrible thing human beings could do to each other and somehow maintained his humanity anyway. Mrs. Whitmore, he said, settling into the chair beside her bed. I know this is difficult. Take your time. Start from the beginning. So Carrie told him everything. The arrival at the cabin, the second car, the discovery of the affair, learning about Danielle's pregnancy, the argument, stepping outside for air, the locked door. She smiled at me, Carrie said. Her voice was steady, but her hands trembled. When she turned that lock, she smiled. Morrison wrote in his notebook. His face betrayed nothing. And your husband, Marcus? Where was he during this? He was upstairs with her. I screamed for him. I pounded on the door. I know he saw me. Carrie's voice broke. He looked right at me through the window, and then he turned around and went upstairs, to her, while I was freezing to death. Did he make any attempt to open the door? No, he just walked away. Morrison was quiet for a long moment. Then he closed his notebook and looked at Carrie with something like compassion. Mrs. Whitmore, what do you're describing as attempted murder? Attempted first-degree murder. The fact that you were pregnant adds a special circumstances charge. Attempted murder of an unborn child. These are serious crimes. Danielle Vance is looking at life in prison. Carrie absorbed this. And Marcus? If the text messages are what your father claims they are, we can charge him as an accomplice, conspiracy to commit murder, accessory to attempted murder. Morrison paused. He could be looking at 20 years or more. Carrie thought about the man she had married, the man she had loved, the man who had smiled and said his vows and promised to protect her until death. He had tried to make good on that promise, just not in the way she had expected. What happens now, she asked. Now we build a case, gather evidence, and interview witnesses. Your father has already provided the security footage. We've obtained Marcus's phone records. The text messages are there, just as he said. Morrison stood, handed her a card. If you remember anything else, anything at all, call me, day or night. And Mrs. Whitmore? Yes? You're very lucky to be alive. Most people in your situation don't survive. The cold, the exposure, the trauma to the baby. He shook his head. Someone was looking out for you up there. After he left, Carrie lay in her hospital bed staring at the ceiling. Lucky. Was that what she was? She didn't feel lucky. She felt broken, betrayed, stripped of everything she had believed about her life and her marriage and her own judgment. But she was alive, and Eleanor was alive, and that had to count for something. A nurse came in to check her vitals. Then another to help her try breastfeeding. Then Margaret with dinner from a nearby restaurant because hospital food was unacceptable for my recovering daughter. By the time evening fell, Carrie was exhausted, but sleep wouldn't come. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Danielle's smile, heard the click of the lock, felt the cold seeping into her bones. So she stayed awake, watching the monitors, listening to the beep of machines, waiting for the sun to rise on the first day of whatever came next. 2 weeks after the blizzard, Carrie left the hospital. She didn't go home. The house in Greenwich, the house she had shared with Marcus, the house where she had imagined raising her daughter, was no longer hers. She had no desire to return to it, no desire to walk through rooms filled with memories of a man who had tried to kill her. Instead, she went to her parents' estate. The Ashford compound occupied 30 acres in the most exclusive part of Connecticut. The main house had 12 bedrooms, a library, a home theater, and a swimming pool that Margaret had never once used. It was excessive, ostentatious. Everything Carrie had tried to escape by building her own life. Now it was sanctuary. Margaret had prepared a suite of rooms on the second floor. Nursery attached to bedroom, attached to sitting room. Everything Eleanor could need. Everything Carrie could need. It's just temporary, Carrie said as she settled onto the bed. Eleanor was asleep in the bassinet beside her, only just until I figure out what comes next. You can stay as long as you want, Margaret said. Forever if you like. This is your home. It's your home. I'm an adult. I should have my own place. Caroline Margaret Whitmore. Margaret used her full name, which she only did when making an important point. You nearly died 2 weeks ago. Your husband tried to kill you. Your entire life has been upended. If there was ever a time to let your parents take care of you, this is it. Carrie wanted to argue. She had spent her whole adult life trying to be independent, trying to prove that she was more than Edward Ashford's daughter, more than a trust fund baby with a famous last name. But Margaret was right. She was too tired, too broken, too overwhelmed to do this alone. Thank you, she whispered. Margaret kissed her forehead. Get some rest. We'll figure everything else out later. The days that followed were both easier and harder than Carrie expected. Easier because Eleanor was healthy, growing, starting to fill out her tiny frame and develop a personality. She slept in 3-hour chunks, which wasn't as bad as the books had warned. She ate well. She rarely cried without reason. Harder because the rest of Carrie's life was falling apart. Marcus called constantly, left voicemails that ranged from apologetic to angry to pathetic. Carrie, please. We need to talk. I can explain everything. I know you're staying with your parents. I just want to see my daughter. I have rights. You can't do this to me. You can't just cut me out. I'm her father. Your dad is destroying me. My accounts are frozen. I've been fired from my own company. Please, just call me. Maybe we can work something out. Hmm. Carrie deleted every message without responding. The legal proceedings moved with surprising speed. Edward's lawyers had been working around the clock. The evidence was overwhelming: security footage, text messages, Carrie's testimony, medical records documenting the extent of her hypothermia. Danielle was charged with attempted first-degree murder and attempted first-degree murder of an unborn child. She was being held without bail. Her family had hired an expensive defense attorney who was making noises about temporary insanity, but no one expected that defense to succeed. Marcus was charged with conspiracy to commit murder and accessory to attempted murder. His bail was set at $5 million. He couldn't pay it. His accounts had been frozen pending investigation, and Edward had made sure no one was willing to post bond for him. He was in jail. The man who had promised to love and protect her was sitting in a cell, waiting for trial. Carrie should have felt satisfaction. Justice was being done. The people who had tried to kill her were being held accountable. Instead, she felt empty. One afternoon, Beth came to visit, her best friend since college, the person who had stood beside her at her wedding, the person who had thrown her baby shower, the person who had seen Marcus and Danielle together and said nothing. Beth sat on the edge of Carrie's bed, holding a cup of tea she wasn't drinking. Her eyes were red, her hands were shaking. "I saw them once," Beth said. Her voice was barely above a whisper. "About a year ago, at a restaurant downtown. They were at a corner table, holding hands." Carrie said nothing, just watched her friend unravel. "I told myself it was nothing, a business meeting, some kind of work thing." Beth laughed bitterly. "I wanted so badly to believe that, because if it was something else, if Marcus was cheating, then everything you had built, everything you believed in, you didn't want to be the one to destroy it." "No." Beth looked up, tears streaming down her face. "I was a coward. I should have told you. I should have said something. Maybe if you had, I wouldn't have been at that cabin at all." The words hung in the air between them. Beth flinched like she'd been slapped. "I'm so sorry," she whispered. "I'm so sorry." Carrie was quiet for a long moment. She thought about the friendship they'd shared for 15 years, the secrets, the inside jokes, the countless hours of conversation and laughter and support. She thought about the year of silence, the knowledge Beth had carried and never shared. "I understand why you didn't tell me," Carrie finally said. "I wouldn't have believed you. I would have been angry. I would have accused you of being jealous or paranoid or trying to ruin my marriage. Still, and you're right, I wouldn't have been at that cabin if I'd known. I might have left Marcus months ago. I might have been safe." Beth's face crumpled. "But I also might have stayed anyway," Carrie continued. "I might have confronted him and believed his excuses. I might have gone to counseling and tried to fix something that was never real to begin with. Because that's what I did, Beth. I ignored warning signs for 3 years. I chose to believe in a fantasy because the truth was too painful to face." "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that you didn't cause this. Marcus caused this. Danielle caused this." Carrie paused. "I need time to process, to heal. But I don't blame you, not really." Beth reached for her hand, squeezed tight. "I don't deserve your forgiveness." "Maybe not, but I'm giving it anyway. Because carrying grudges takes energy I don't have right now. And because you're my friend. Despite everything, you're still my friend." They sat together in silence for a long time, watching Eleanor sleep, listening to the sounds of the house around them. It wasn't absolution, it wasn't reconciliation, but it was something. That night, after Beth had gone and Eleanor was asleep and the house was quiet, Carrie did something she had been putting off since the hospital. She drove to the house she had shared with Marcus. It was a beautiful home, Tudor style, 6 bedrooms, 3 acres of manicured grounds. They had bought it 2 years ago, just before the wedding. Marcus had said it was the perfect place to raise a family. She had believed him. Of course she had. Carrie parked in the driveway, didn't get out of the car, just sat there staring at the house where she had imagined her future. The master bedroom was on the 2nd floor. Corner room, windows overlooking the garden. She had hung curtains that matched the bedspread, had arranged furniture to catch the morning light, had made love to Marcus in that room 100 times, believing every moment was real. Had he been thinking about Danielle? Had he been counting the days until he could be with her again? The nursery was next door. The room she had decorated with such care. Yellow walls, butterfly mobile, books on the shelves. Eleanor would never sleep in that nursery, would never hear those books read aloud in that room, would never know the house her mother had prepared for her. Carrie sat in the driveway for an hour, 2, 3. She didn't cry. She was past crying, past anger, past everything except a hollow, echoing emptiness. Finally, as the sky began to lighten with dawn, she started the car and drove away. She didn't look back. 3 months after the blizzard, Carrie moved out of her parents' house. Not far, just to a restored farmhouse on 15 acres, about 20 minutes from the Ashford estate. Close enough for her parents to visit, far enough to feel like her own space. The house needed work. The previous owners had let it fall into disrepair. Paint was peeling, the kitchen was outdated. The gardens were overgrown with weeds. Carrie loved it immediately. There was something healing about taking something broken and making it whole again, about stripping walls down to bare plaster and rebuilding them fresh, about pulling weeds and planting flowers, about creating beauty from neglect. Eleanor was 3 months old now, healthy, growing, already starting to smile at familiar faces. She had Carrie's dark eyes and what appeared to be Marcus's chin, though Carrie tried not to think about that too often. "She's going to be a heartbreaker," Beth said during one of her weekly visits. "Look at those eyelashes." "She gets them from my mother," Carrie said. Margaret had the longest lashes in her debutante class. She never lets anyone forget it. They were sitting on the farmhouse porch, watching the sunset over the fields. Eleanor was asleep in her carrier between them. The air smelled like fresh paint and new beginnings. "How are you doing?" Beth asked. "Really?" Carrie considered the question. How was she doing? It was complicated. Some days were good. She woke up with energy, enjoyed Eleanor's smiles, made progress on the house, felt something like hope for the future. Other days were harder. She woke up from nightmares about the cold, heard Danielle's voice in quiet moments, found herself questioning every decision, every memory, every moment of her marriage. "I'm surviving," Carrie finally said. "Some days that feels like enough. Other days I want more." What does more look like? Carrie watched a hawk circle over the distant tree line. Hunting, patient, certain of its purpose. "I want to help other women," she said slowly. "Women who are trapped in bad situations, bad marriages, abusive relationships. Women who don't have my resources, my family, my options. Like a foundation? Maybe, or a shelter, or a legal fund. I don't know yet." Carrie turned to look at Beth. "I survived because my father came for me, because he had the money and the connections to make sure Marcus and Danielle faced consequences. But what about women who don't have that, who are trapped because they can't afford a lawyer, can't afford to leave?" Beth was quiet for a moment. "That's a beautiful idea. It's just an idea right now, but I want to make it real. I want something good to come out of all this pain." The divorce was finalized in May. Carrie kept nothing from the marriage except Eleanor. No money, no property, no assets of any kind. She didn't want them, didn't want anything that had been touched by Marcus's lies. Her father offered to ensure she got her fair share, probably more than her fair share, given the circumstances. But Carrie refused. "I have my trust fund," she said. "I have the farmhouse. I have everything I need. And I don't want to spend the next year fighting over assets with a man who tried to kill me." "He's going to prison anyway," Edward pointed out. "His assets will be seized for restitution." "Then let them be seized. I don't care. I just want it to be over." Edward didn't argue. He understood in his own way. Sometimes the price of peace was worth more than the money you might gain from fighting. The criminal trial was scheduled for August. Danielle's lawyers had filed motion after motion, trying to delay. Temporary insanity, diminished capacity, prosecution misconduct. Nothing stuck. The evidence was too strong. The footage too clear. The text messages too damning. She's going to prison, Detective Morrison told Carrie during one of their periodic check-ins. 25 to life if the DA gets what he's asking for. Maybe more. And Marcus? 15 to 20. The conspiracy charges are solid, but he wasn't the one who locked the door. The jury will see him as an accomplice rather than the primary actor. He left me to die. I know, and the prosecution will make that very clear. But legally, there's a difference between action and inaction, even when the inaction is monstrous. Carrie accepted this. She had learned over the past few months that justice and fairness were not the same thing, that the legal system had limitations, that some wrongs could never be fully righted no matter how many years someone spent in prison. But Marcus would lose years of his life, would lose his reputation, would lose any chance of a relationship with his daughter. It wasn't enough, but it was something. One afternoon in late June, Patricia Whitmore came to visit. Carrie was in the garden when she heard a car pull up. She wiped dirt from her hands and walked around to the front of the house, expecting to see Beth or her mother. Instead, she found her former mother-in-law standing in the driveway. Patricia looked smaller than Carrie remembered, older, diminished somehow. The confident society matron who had hosted charity galas and judged everyone beneath her had been replaced by a woman who seemed uncertain of her place in the world. "I'm not here to make excuses for my son," Patricia said before Carrie could speak. "There are none. What he did, what he allowed to happen." She shook her head. "It's unforgivable." Carrie studied the woman, tried to find anger, found only exhaustion. "Then why are you here?" "Because I want to know my granddaughter." Patricia's eyes filled with tears. "I know I have no right to ask. I know you owe me nothing. Gerald and I have talked about nothing else for months. We keep coming back to the same conclusion. Eleanor is innocent in all of this. She didn't choose her father. She didn't choose what he did. And she deserves to know her grandparents, if you'll allow it." Carrie was silent for a long moment. She thought about Eleanor, asleep upstairs in her nursery. Thought about the future stretching out ahead of them, all the years of questions Eleanor would ask about her father, about his family, about where she came from. Patricia wasn't Marcus. Gerald wasn't Marcus. They had raised him, yes, had perhaps enabled some of his worst tendencies, but they hadn't tried to kill her. They hadn't left her to freeze. "Come inside," Carrie finally said. "We'll talk." They sat in the farmhouse kitchen. Carrie made tea. Patricia held her cup without drinking, her hands wrapped around the warm ceramic like she was seeking comfort. "I should have seen it," Patricia said. "The signs were there. The late nights, the business trips, the way he looked at that woman." She shook her head. But Marcus was always charming, always knew exactly what to say. He learned that from his father, I'm afraid. Gerald was the same way when he was young. Was Gerald unfaithful? I don't know. I chose not to know. It was a different time. Women in my generation, we were taught to look the other way, to keep the family together at all costs. And look how well that worked out. Patricia flinched. "You're right to be angry. You're right to hate us." "I don't hate you." Carrie set down her tea. "I'm too tired for hate. And Eleanor needs family, real family who will love her and support her and tell her the truth when she's old enough to hear it. We will, I promise, whatever it takes." Carrie looked at the woman across from her, the woman who had raised the man who had tried to kill her, the woman who had smiled at her wedding and bought baby clothes for her shower and welcomed her into a family that had turned out to be built on lies. "We'll start slow," Carrie said. "Supervised visits, a few hours at a time. If that goes well, we can talk about more." Patricia's face transformed, hope and gratitude and relief all tangled together. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you for giving us a chance." Later that evening, after Patricia had gone and Eleanor was fed and the house was quiet, Carrie sat in the rocking chair by the nursery window. The sun was setting, orange and pink and purple streaked across the sky. The fields beyond the house were green with summer growth. Fireflies were starting to blink in the gathering darkness. Beautiful, peaceful, safe. She thought about the woman she had been 6 months ago. Naive, trusting, desperate for a love that was never real. That woman was gone. In her place was someone stronger, someone wiser, someone who had walked through fire and emerged on the other side. Not unchanged, not undamaged, but alive, and learning to thrive. The baby stirred in her crib, made a small sound. Carrie crossed the room and looked down at her daughter. Eleanor was awake. Her dark eyes, Carrie's eyes, were fixed on her mother's face with that serious, studying gaze she had developed. "Hi, sweet girl," Carrie whispered. "Having trouble sleeping?" Eleanor made another sound, not a cry, more like a question. Carrie lifted her from the crib, settled back into the rocking chair. Eleanor snuggled against her chest, warm and solid and real. "Let me tell you a story," Carrie said softly. "Once upon a time, there was a princess who lived in a beautiful castle. She had everything she could ever want: pretty dresses and delicious food and servants who took care of her every need." Eleanor blinked. But the princess was lonely. She wanted someone to love. So when a handsome prince came to the castle and promised to love her forever, she believed him. She married him and moved to his kingdom and tried to live happily ever after. Carrie paused, stroked Eleanor's soft hair. But the prince was lying. He didn't love the princess at all. He only wanted her father's gold. And when the princess found out, the prince tried to lock her in a tower and throw away the key. Eleanor's eyes were drifting closed. But Carrie continued anyway. This story needed to be told, even if the audience was too young to understand. But the princess was stronger than the prince knew. She survived the tower. She escaped, and she realized something important. She didn't need a prince to save her. She could save herself. Eleanor was asleep now, her breathing slow and steady against Carrie's chest. And so the princess built a new kingdom, a better kingdom, one where she was in charge of her own story, and she raised a daughter who was brave and strong and wise, a daughter who knew that her worth didn't depend on anyone else, a daughter who would never let anyone lock her in a tower. Carrie kissed Eleanor's forehead. "That's the kind of princess I want you to be, sweet girl, the kind who rescues herself." She stayed in the rocking chair for a long time, holding her daughter, watching the stars appear through the window, thinking about the future. It wouldn't be easy. There would be hard days ahead, hard months, hard years. But she would face them, and she would survive them, and she would build something beautiful from the ashes of her old life. That was what Ashfords did. They survived. The courtroom was packed. Every seat was filled. Reporters lined the walls. Camera crews waited outside. The trial of Danielle Vance and Marcus Whitmore had captured national attention, a story of betrayal and murder that seemed ripped from a soap opera. Carrie sat in the front row with her parents. She wore a simple navy dress, no jewelry except her grandmother's pearls. She wanted to look composed, strong, like a woman who had been through hell and come out the other side. Inside, her stomach churned with nerves. The trial had lasted 3 weeks. Witnesses had testified, the paramedics who had treated Carrie, the doctors who had saved her life, the security experts who had authenticated the footage from the cabin. Carrie herself had taken the stand, had told her story in excruciating detail, had answered questions from both prosecution and defense, had looked at Danielle across the courtroom and seen nothing but cold hatred in return. Marcus hadn't taken the stand. His lawyers had advised against it. The text messages were damning enough without giving the prosecution a chance to cross-examine him. Today was sentencing day. Danielle was brought in first. She wore an orange jumpsuit, no makeup. Her hair, once perfect, hung limp around her shoulders. Prison had stripped away everything artificial. What remained was ordinary, small, diminished. She didn't look at Carrie, didn't look at anyone except her lawyer, who was whispering urgently in her ear. The judge entered. Everyone rose. The formalities played out like a choreographed dance. The calling to order, the reading of the verdicts, the reminder that this was the sentencing phase. "Danielle Marie Vance," the judge said, "you have been found guilty of attempted first-degree murder and attempted first-degree murder of an unborn child. Before I pass sentence, do you have anything you wish to say?" Danielle's lawyer stood. "Your Honor, my client wishes to address the court." The judge nodded. Danielle rose unsteadily to her feet. "I made a mistake," she said. Her voice was thin, reedy, nothing like the confident purr Carrie remembered from the cabin. "I was in love. I thought Marcus and I were going to be together. I thought if she was gone..." She trailed off, looked at her lawyer, looked at the judge. I never meant for anyone to get hurt. Carrie almost laughed. Almost. 3 hours in a blizzard, core temperature of 84 degrees, 2 cardiac arrests on the operating table, and Danielle never meant for anyone to get hurt. Miss Vance, the judge said, you locked a pregnant woman outside in a blizzard. You went upstairs and had sexual relations with her husband while she was dying 10 feet away. At no point did you attempt to check on her. At no point did you express a concern for her well-being. At no point did you do anything except further your own interests. The judge's voice was ice. I have presided over many cases in my 30 years on the bench. Murders, assaults, crimes of passion, and crimes of calculation. But I have rarely encountered anything as cold, literally and figuratively, as what you did. Danielle began to cry. The tears seemed real, but Carrie felt nothing. Danielle Marie Vance, I hereby sentence you to 25 years to life in state prison. You will not be eligible for parole for a minimum of 20 years. Danielle screamed as the bailiffs approached her. It's not fair, she wailed. Marcus made me do it. He told me to lock the door. He said we couldn't be together as long as she was alive. It's not fair. The bailiffs took her arms, started leading her toward the door. He promised to marry me, Danielle shouted. He promised we would be a family. He lied. He lied about everything. The courtroom doors closed. Her screaming faded. Carrie exhaled. One down, one to go. Marcus was brought in next. He looked different from the man Carrie had married. Prison had changed him too. He had lost weight, lost the arrogant set of his shoulders, lost the easy confidence that had charmed her into his bed and his life. He looked at her when he entered. Just once. A flash of something in his eyes. Regret, maybe. Or just the awareness of everything he had lost. Marcus David Whitmore, the judge said, you have been found guilty of conspiracy to commit murder and accessory to attempted murder. Do you have anything you wish to say before I pass sentence? Marcus's lawyer stood. Your Honor, my client wishes to express his deep remorse for his role in these events. He never intended for his wife to be harmed. He has cooperated fully with the prosecution and accepts the responsibility for his actions. Marcus himself said nothing. He just stood there staring at the floor. Mr. Whitmore, the judge said, your text messages to Danielle Vance make your intentions clear. Make sure she doesn't come back inside. I need time to think. These are the words of a man who knew exactly what was happening to his wife and chose to do nothing. The judge shook her head. You were given every advantage in life, a good education, a successful career, a devoted wife, a child on the way. And you threw it all away. For what? An affair? A chance to start over without the inconvenience of your existing family? Marcus remained silent. I've heard the testimony about your cooperation, about your remorse, about your acceptance of responsibility. But Mr. Whitmore, remorse is something you feel before you commit a crime. What you feel afterward, when you've been caught, when you're facing consequences, that's not remorse. That's regret. Regret that you got caught. Regret that your plan didn't work. Regret that you're standing here today instead of living happily with your mistress while your wife and child lie frozen in a Vermont cemetery. The courtroom was utterly silent. Marcus David Whitmore, I sentence you to 15 to 20 years in state prison. You will not be eligible for parole for a minimum of 12 years. Marcus said nothing as the bailiffs led him away. His face was blank, empty, the face of a man who had finally realized that his actions had consequences he couldn't escape. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed. Mrs. Whitmore, how do you feel about the sentences? Mrs. Whitmore, do you think justice was served? Mrs. Whitmore, what's next for you and your daughter? Carrie didn't give a statement, didn't need to. The sentences spoke for themselves. Her father took her arm. Her mother took the other. Together, they walked through the crowd to the waiting car. It's over, Edward said as they pulled away. Carrie watched the courthouse recede in the rearview mirror. No, she said, it's just beginning. 1 year later, Carrie stood at the entrance to the Ashford Center for Women's Safety. The building had once been a factory. Now it was a refuge. 30 beds for women fleeing dangerous situations. A legal aid clinic, a job training center, a child care facility. Everything a woman might need to rebuild her life after escaping abuse. The grand opening had drawn a crowd, local politicians, social workers, survivors who had already benefited from the center's programs, reporters from every major outlet eager to cover the latest project from the Ashford family. Carrie had never liked public speaking. But today, standing at the podium, looking out at the faces of women who had survived their own blizzards, she found the words came easily. 1 year ago, I almost died, she began. I was locked outside in a snowstorm by a woman who wanted to take my husband. That same husband, the man who had promised to love and protect me, chose to go to bed with his mistress, while I froze to death 10 feet away. The crowd was silent, rapt. I survived because of my father, because he had the resources to drive through a blizzard, the money to hire the best doctors, the connections to ensure justice was served. But while I was lying in that hospital bed, recovering from hypothermia and emergency surgery, I kept thinking about the women who don't have those resources, the women who are trapped in bad situations because they can't afford a lawyer, can't afford a deposit on a new apartment, can't afford to start over. She looked out at the crowd, at the faces of survivors, at the hope in their eyes. The Ashford Center is for those women. It's a place where anyone, regardless of their financial situation, can find safety, support, and the resources to build a new life. Because everyone deserves a chance to escape their own blizzard. Everyone deserves a father who will drive through the storm to save them. The applause was thunderous. Afterward, Carrie walked through the center with Eleanor on her hip. The baby, not really a baby anymore, more like a toddler, was 18 months old now, walking, talking, getting into everything. "Mama, look," Eleanor said, pointing at the colorful mural on the wall. "Pretty." "Yes, sweet girl, it's beautiful." The mural depicted a woman emerging from a storm into sunlight. Her arms were spread wide. Her face was turned toward the squishy. Behind her, dark clouds receded. Before her, a golden horizon beckoned. Carrie had commissioned it specifically for the center. A reminder that darkness doesn't last forever. That every storm eventually breaks. That sunrise always comes. Beth found her in the children's playroom, watching Eleanor stack blocks. "You did good," Beth said. "This place? It's incredible. It's just the beginning. We're opening a second location in Hartford next month, and I'm in talks with 3 other cities about partnerships." "World domination through women's services?" Carrie smiled. "Something like that." They watched Eleanor play in companionable silence. The little girl was fearless, climbing, exploring, knocking down her block tower just for the joy of building it again. "She's amazing," Beth said. "She doesn't remember any of it. The cabin, the cold, the emergency surgery, none of it." Carrie paused. "I'm grateful for that. She gets to start fresh, no trauma, no pain, just a whole life stretching out in front of her." "And you, how are you doing?" Carrie considered the question. A year ago, she would have said she was surviving. 6 months ago, she would have said she was recovering. Now, "I'm happy," she said. The words surprised her even as she spoke them. Actually, genuinely happy. "I have Eleanor. I have the center. I have a life that I built myself from the ground up. It's not what I imagined when I got married. It's not the fairy tale I thought I wanted. But it's real, and it's mine." Beth reached over and squeezed her hand. "I'm proud of you," Beth said. "For what it's worth, I'm really, really proud of you." That evening, Carrie drove home to the farmhouse. The renovations were finally complete. Fresh paint on every wall, new appliances in the kitchen, gardens blooming with summer flowers. It had taken a year, but the broken-down farmhouse had become something beautiful. Like her, she thought. She carried Eleanor inside and put her down for her nap. Then she poured herself a glass of wine, her first real indulgence in weeks, and walked out to the porch. The sun was setting. The sky was painted in shades of orange and pink and purple. Fireflies were starting to blink in the fields. The air smelled like cut grass and possibility. She thought about the past year, the trial, the sentencing, the divorce, the months of therapy and tears and rebuilding. She thought about Marcus sitting in a prison cell somewhere in upstate New York. He had written her once, about 6 months ago, a letter full of apologies and excuse and pleas for forgiveness. She had burned it without reading past the first paragraph. She thought about Danielle in a women's prison in Connecticut. Last she heard, Danielle had tried to kill herself twice. The guards were keeping her on suicide watch. Carrie felt nothing about that. Not satisfaction, not pity, just emptiness. She had forgiven them, not for their sake, but for her own. Carrying grudges was exhausting. Holding on to hatred was like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. She had let it go, all of it, and found something like peace on the other side. The screen door creaked behind her. Beautiful evening. She turned. Her father stood in the doorway, holding 2 glasses of whiskey. "Thought you could use some company," he said. "Always." He settled into the rocking chair beside her. They sat in comfortable silence for a long moment, watching the fireflies dance. "I'm proud of you," Edward finally said. "The center, the way you've handled everything, the woman you've become. I learned from the best." "Your mother, you mean?" Carrie laughed. "Her too." Edward took a sip of his whiskey. "You know, when you were little, I used to worry about you. You were so trusting, so eager to see the best in everyone. I was afraid someone would take advantage of that." "Someone did." "Yes." Edward's voice hardened briefly, then softened again. "But you survived. You came out stronger. That's what matters." Carrie looked at her father. At the gray in his hair that hadn't been there a year ago. At the lines around his eyes that seemed deeper. At the man who had driven through a blizzard to save her life. "Thank you," she said, "for everything, for saving me, for destroying them, for being there every step of the way. I'm your father. It's my job." "No." She reached over and took his hand. "It's more than that. You chose to fight for me. You chose to believe something was wrong when everyone else was telling you to stay home. You chose me, and I'll never forget that." Edward's eyes glistened. He looked away toward the sunset. "You're my daughter," he said gruffly. "I'd do it 1,000 times over." They sat together until the stars came out, talking about nothing and everything, father and daughter, survivors both. Later, after Edward had gone home and the house was quiet, Carrie checked on Eleanor one last time. Her daughter was sprawled across the crib mattress, arms and legs akimbo, lost in the dreamless sleep of the innocent. Her dark hair curled against her forehead. Her rosebud lips were slightly parted. Her chest rose and fell with each peaceful breath. "I love you," Carrie whispered, "more than I knew it was possible to love anything." She thought about the future, all the years stretching out ahead of them. First steps already taken, first words already spoken, first days of school, first heartbreaks, first triumphs. She would be there for all of it. Every milestone, every challenge, every pain and every sorrow, and she would teach Eleanor the most important lesson she had learned. That love could be a trap, yes. That trust could be betrayed. That the people who promised to protect you could be the ones who hurt you most. But also this, that survival was possible. That healing was possible. That you could walk through fire and emerge, scarred but stronger. That you could build a life from the ashes of the old one. A better life. A truer life. A life that was entirely your own. Carrie closed the nursery door softly, walked to her own bedroom, climbed into bed. The sheets were cool and clean. The pillows were soft. The window was open, letting in the sounds of summer night, crickets and owls and the rustle of wind through leaves. She closed her eyes, and for the first time in a very long time, she slept without dreams. Outside, the moon rose over the farmhouse. Silver light spilled across the fields, the gardens, the home that Carrie had built from broken pieces. Somewhere an owl called into the darkness. Somewhere a woman in prison stared at concrete walls. Somewhere a man counted the days until a parole he would never receive. But here, in this farmhouse, in this moment, there was only peace, there was only hope. There was only the future, wide open and waiting, like a book with blank pages ready to be written. And Carrie would write it herself, one day at a time, one choice at a time, one beautiful, imperfect, perfectly her own story at a time. And that's how Caroline Ashford survived the coldest night of her life and built something beautiful from the ashes. If this story touched your heart, hit that like button and let me know in the comments. Have you ever trusted someone who betrayed you? I'd love to hear your story. Share this with someone who needs to know that survival is always possible. And if you haven't already, subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss another story. Until next time, stay strong, stay warm, and never let anyone lock you out in the cold.